Hey, writer, ready to take your fiction to the next level? Whether you've just got a great idea or you're already stuck in the murky middle of writing your book, the Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp I designed just for you. This 8-week self paced online course gives you the tools, the guidance, and the support you need to get to the end of your book and know that it is wicked good. Head to suzyvidori.com/bootcamp or follow the link in the show notes for more information and get started today. I'll see you inside where I'll be there to support you as you comment and share your work throughout the course. Welcome to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Suzy Vidori, where I teach you the tried and true secrets to writing fiction, nonfiction that are going to wow your readers, broken down step by step. We're going to explore writing techniques. I'm going to show you a glimpse behind the scenes of successful writers' careers that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And I'm also going to coach writers live on their pages so that you can learn and transform your own storytelling. Whether you're just starting out, you're drafting your first book, you're editing, or you're currently rewriting that book, or maybe even your 10th book, this show's going to help you unlock the writing skills that you didn't even know you needed, but you definitely do. I'm so looking forward to helping you get your amazing ideas from your mind onto your pages in an exciting way for both you and your readers so that you can achieve your wildest writing dreams. And you're going to also have some fun doing it. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am so excited today to have on the podcast Allyson McCollum. Allyson is a writer that I met several years ago now. She joined my Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp in 2021. She had this huge vision for this really amazing paranormal fantasy. It's for young adults, and it's all about the afterlife and death and the Grim Reaper. And if anyone could pull this off, it is Allyson. Her prose is just the most beautiful language that I have seen in a long time. And juxtaposing that with this topic was just such a breath of fresh air. I am so excited for you all to read this book, to hear what Allyson has to say. I worked with her on this concept in the boot camp and she worked through it and finished the draft. I then had the immense privilege of performing a developmental edit on this book just about a year ago now in October of 2023. And then a couple of weeks ago, Allyson sent me the published book in the mail, and I didn't even know what she was up to because we'd kind of lost touch over the revision period. And she sent it to me as a thank you. And I opened it up and I was just so excited. And I emailed her right away and said, "Come on the podcast. Tell me what's going on. Let's catch up. Let's figure out what happened." I love bringing writers that I've worked with on the podcast because I get this opportunity to have this deeper conversation about how that book evolved and how it developed. And that's what I really want to share with you, the listeners, is how these books actually come to be and what the dream was and what the writers had to do to get there. Allyson lives in Georgia in the mountains, and she says that she writes to procrastinate on her chores and she does chores to procrastinate on writing. Whom she doesn't really do her justice. She dedicates a ton of time to writing, and I just can't wait for this conversation. I'm going to read you an excerpt or the blurb from the back of the book to just get you pumped. Oh, and the book is called Mors Obliviscens, and I hope I said that right, but basically it means forgetting death, and that's in Latin. And I love that she used it's so meta, and we talk about this on the podcast. She used a dead language to name her book about death. It is so cool. Okay, so here's the blurb from the back of the book. What happens after death? Flit has no idea who she is. She doesn't remember her name, how she got here, or where here is. When she encounters the Grim Reaper who tells her that she has died and is now in purgatory, unlike other souls who pass on to heaven or hell, her only real option is to leave with him. He gives her a name and takes her with him to an abandoned cabin where she tries to recover her memories. As she helps him retrieve the souls of the dead, she starts to wonder what really happened to her. Was she supposed to die? What happened to her family? Did someone kill her? As they reap more passing souls and face new creatures, she has more questions than answers. There is a war brewing, and Flit finds herself caught in the threads of a battle between angels and demons descending into the depths of hell to save someone she thought was a myth. Will she help the angels and prevail? Or will she learn that the secrets of death are darker than she could have imagined? Yes, great job on the blurb, Allison. This really captures what the book is about, and Allison has woven the mythology of many, many different, from her Baptist upbringing to many, many different religions into this and her concept of the afterlife. I can't wait to share this conversation with you. There's tons of revelations in it, and definitely check out the book. It is one that you are super going to enjoy in a way that you probably don't expect. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Allison. Allison, congratulations. It's been about 8 weeks since your book, and I'm going to let you say the title because it's hard. Go ahead.
Mors Obliviscens.
Mors Obliviscens. I can mirror it. Mors Obliviscens was launched, and how's it all going so far?
It's been pretty good. I've gotten a good bit of interest, mostly online. We have not gotten the ebook count back yet because apparently that takes longer. But I have sold 36 physical copies so far that we know of
That's
as of
amazing.
as of
Congratulations.
this week.
As of this week. And I know that publishing this book has been something that you've been wanting to do for a long time. What's the dream? Like, what is your writing dream?
I want to be able to at least make a decent. I don't have to get rich and famous. That'd be nice, but don't have to. I mean, I would like to make a living off of just writing because it's hard to find a job these days that's actually rewarding enough to stick with long term.
Yeah, I love that. So, how did you get into writing and what were you doing? Like, how did you prepare for it and how did you start writing?
Well, I was taught to read and write in preschool, really, because my parents and grandparents didn't have anything else to do, I guess. And I've just always written stories all the way from elementary school onward, and just, it's always been something I've been interested in. And then I found the boot camp, which helped me kind of organize things a little bit more, and found some other books and things like that because you can't ever have too many resources when it comes to that sort of thing because there's so many different methods that some may work for you, some may not, and you just have to go through and find it. And then I found Ballast Publishing when I was looking for a publisher. I knew I didn't want to go through one of the big ones because their waiting list is like years long. You may not get in, and I don't have the patience for that.
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, when you're designing your creative life as a writer, you can get creative, right? You get to make those decisions. And what other types of jobs? Because I always love, especially because you came into the boot camp and then we worked together a little bit there and then edited this manuscript together. But people from all walks of life bring such different skills to writing. And I just find it fascinating. Like you've had other jobs that aren't writing jobs, right?
Yeah. The first place I worked at was a home goods warehouse. It was like 45 minutes away from my house, and God, my feet hated that. It was pretty interesting though, because I would inspect the things as they came into the warehouse, make sure it was the correct thing, that it was going the right place. And they had some of the weirdest furniture and stuff come through there. I think the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my life was a cowhide couch and love seat set that had silver paint splattered all over it. I
Oh,
don't
wow.
know whose aesthetic that's supposed to fit, but they wanted too much for it. So,
I think aesthetic for you. I mean, I just love this cover. We can't see it on the we can't see it on the podcast, but it will be in the show notes. We'll have some pictures of the cover. But I just saw it. It came in the mail. I actually didn't realize that you were publishing so quickly. It's only been a year since we worked on the developmental edit of this book together, and then it showed up in the mail. It's like
Yeah,
amazing. I
it
can't believe
snuck
it's
up
out.
on me too.
Were you able to be involved in the cover? How did this cover come about, or was that the publisher?
So I sent them in a cover that I designed, and they kind of used that to play around with because they had a graphic designer that designed that, and she came up with 5 or 6 different proofs and was like, which one of these do you think fits it the most? And that's what we went with. There were a couple of very minor changes to the original one that looked like that, but it wasn't anything super obvious. I don't think the flames were at the bottom of it originally.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah,
they
no, I love the flames.
actually I think they were solid white instead of just the line. Something like that. I don't remember. But we
Yeah,
made a couple of little minor changes to it.
beautiful. And when I first read the sample that you sent me of your writing when inquiring about editing a year ago, what struck me was your incredibly beautiful use of language. And you have such a literary feel to your writing, which is unusual and really refreshing in the fantasy and paranormal fantasy genre. Did you know that what you're bringing to the table is different? Did you realize that your writing was different?
I kind of thought that it was because other things that I've written and shown to people, they're like, I heard your voice while I was reading this. And I don't talk exactly like that, but sometimes if I'm, describing something, it does tend to lean that way. But I guess that's probably, due to the books that I read, and I do have an English degree, so that probably didn't help.
It absolutely helps. I think your use of language is uncommonly excellent. And so
Like,
I think what is amazing about this book and what I want listeners to know is that you are in for a ride that you are going to be completely immersed. And I want to talk about some of that because in paranormal fantasy, there's often themes of the afterlife, right? And
yeah.
this book is a really fresh take on this. Can you share with us a bit of your magic system and what makes it so unique about this afterlife that Flit experiences in the book?
Well, I tried to incorporate how I was raised, but not in the usual lens that it's usually projected with, because I was raised Baptist, but a lot of I'm not really religious now per se, I guess you could say, but I tried to use a lot of that, mythology, and then I took a religion class in college and learned more about other religions, so I kind of tried to incorporate them and connect them some kind of way that I'd never personally seen before, but still made sense to me, you know.
Yeah. And I mean,
Like,
your afterlife is quite dark, right? It's it's dark and I love it. You have so many interesting things. You have coins and you have like all these different pieces and you have the embodiment of the Grim Reaper. Grim is one of the main characters in there, right? And how did that all come about for you?
so the original story it came out of a dream that I had that was a little bit different because, in the book, spoilers y'all, Flit drowned. In the original one there was a fire and she still stayed with Grimm and all that, and I don't remember exactly how it ended. I think it may have ended on a cliffhanger because, I'm a writer, of course it did. But I don't know what inspired the dream, really. It was just kind of a random one off out of nowhere, and it just kind of stuck with me, I guess. And then I tried to use that story in school for different writing assignments, and it just kind of evolved from there.
So it's been a story that's been with you for a long time then.
Long time. It just didn't
Long
get
time.
written down until 2019, I think, is when I actually sat down and was like, oh, I could actually turn that into a book. Because in college, I want to say it was that year, it may have been 18, I took a screenwriting class and used it for one of our final assignments where we had to come up with an original story and turn it into a screenplay, or at least part of it. And that's where it started, evolving into the novel.
And each book is only one person's story. And you and I have had this conversation before. And primarily, we had lots of discussion about in your early drafts, you had a lot of different point of views because I think that's how the story came to you. And then in the discussions, really, it's about Grimm and Flit and Flit's story of how it all unfolds. And I see that you've still got those snippets from some of the other points of view, but you've grouped them at the end, which is great. It's really effective. But how did changing these points of view go during your revision process? Because you and I haven't really discussed that. We worked together on the editing process and you got all your feedback, and then you went away and revised it, and now you're published. So, how did it all go when you took all those different points of views and you kind of put more of Grimm into that second half? How did that work out?
It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. A lot of it was
Mhm.
just changing pronouns around, honestly, and, switching who did what. There were a couple of scenes where I had to add things in because otherwise it wouldn't make sense from that person's point of view. And I did have to take out one person's point of, well, no, it was a couple people's point of view entirely.
Mhm.
But I'm probably going to have a little novella that's not in between the first and second book, but it goes with the second book that I'm slowly getting around to writing. And I'm going to try to incorporate some of the points of view that I had to throw out of the first book into that.
Right. And I think, I mean, yes, it's Flit's story, but Grimm is my absolute fave. Grimm is your name for the Reaper-like character. He's death himself, right? And you've managed to make a villain in your book really relatable. What motivated you to make this guy, this death, so sympathetic?
Well, those tend to be the better villains because you can kind of see how they got to the point they got, and you're like, if I was in that situation, would I have done the same thing? Would I have done something worse? Could I have resisted that temptation? And it makes you think. I mean, some of the just straight up evil villains don't make you think like that. They're just evil for being evil. And there's some characters like that in the book too, because I mean they're demons. They kind of have to be evil. They don't really have well, they do have ulterior motives, but not in a positive sense, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I just can't wait for readers to get a hold of this and for you to get it like more widely distributed because people are going to fall in love with Grimm. I invite listeners, check this book out because you're just going to be so interested in Grimm. Flit 2, yes, Flit 2, but you're going to be really interested in this poor death character. And the book actually opens with Flit's death or what happens after her death and her not remembering anything about her human life or her life on earth and having to piece it back together. And this is like a classic formula or a classic structure for a suspense novel when there's like that spoiler at the beginning, somebody's dead, there's murder, whatever, we see it, and then the characters actually have to piece everything back together, so you kind of dole out clues along the way, but it's got that spoiler at the front. Did you set out to model that suspense format, or is it something that just happened as you wrote?
It kind of just happened. I do watch, crime dramas and, true
Yes.
crime stuff and things like that. So that probably unconsciously, influenced that because that's one of the main things that I watch and read. And, so I'm sure that snuck in there somehow. It also made the most sense structure wise because I didn't want to have to throw in like flashbacks and stuff because a lot of people don't like those if they're
Hmm.
all over the place. You can do a couple here and there, but don't get carried away with them.
Yeah, so it was really neat the way that it unfolded because we knew that she died, but we didn't really understand what her story was. And then we kind of get those moments. And we get it real time as she's learning about herself and she learns her true name. I won't spoil it here, but she starts to remember pieces about her life and figures out why she's in this situation. And not a spoiler alert, but it won't be what you expect. It's actually a much, much more layered story. Everything that you've put into it is absolutely brilliant. You've got some amazing world building elements, and the reasons why she ended up there and the mythology that you're able to bring in there and who Flit actually is really an amazing ride. So good job. The title itself, how did you come up with it? And what did you want it to invoke? Because I think when we spoke, like when we were working on this, you didn't have a title for the book yet.
I really don't know where I got the idea for the Latin. I guess I thought forgetting death in English was just kind of, whatever. But
Oh, is that what it
especially,
means? I didn't even know that's what
yeah,
it meant.
that's what it
Okay.
translates to is forgetting death. And originally, I did not have it conjugated correctly because I did not take Latin, because I didn't know that was an option in our school system until my husband told me, oh, yeah, I took Latin all the way through high school and college.
Amazing.
I was stuck in Spanish the whole time. You mean I could have learned Latin? Nobody told me. It
Because it's such a vibrant language, right?
really,
So
like, it's
did he
literally
help you with
a
the
dead language.
Yeah, I know. But that's amazing, and there's so many layers to that. I mean, your book is literally about the afterlife and death and an interpretation of that. And so yeah, that you used a dead language is amazing. Did he help you with the conjugation then, or who caught that?
Yeah, he looked at whatever draft I was on I think I was still in like the first or second draft when we started dating. And he was like, this isn't conjugated, right? You do know that. Like, no, how would I know that?
I
So
love that
he
you're just willing to take a risk like that. It's amazing.
yeah, I mean, I got it pretty close. I think I just had the words switched because I don't remember how I had it written, but it was close because I used Google Translate and it was not quite where it needed to be.
Well, I love it. It's very unique. Was it surprising how the relationship between Flit and Grimm turned out on your page? Because I think, it's actually a really tender relationship, and their friendship is one of the more interesting parts about the book. And in early drafts, it wasn't pulled all the way to the end, and that's something that we discussed, and now it is, because I really missed it when they kind of were going their separate ways, and now you've kind of figured that piece out. But I was actually thrilled about how you were able to revise this and pull that connection all the way to the end. Are you happy with the results on that actual
Oh,
friendship? Because I think it's
oh,
amazing.
definitely. Yeah, I wasn't expecting him at first to be so, I don't know what word really to use. Not exactly nurturing, but I guess protective of her because most depictions of death, he's supposed to be impartial, unbiased, whatever, not in the middle of everything. And then this one is in the middle of everything, throwing monkey wrenches right and left. And it just kind of naturally evolved that way. And then when they split up, I was like, what would he do now that cat's out of the bag, so to speak? And she's not there to help control those impulses, and he's not there to control her impulses. What kind of trouble can we get into?
Yeah, I love that. And really, he's not human. And yet you've got so many flawed and human and tender moments that really make it, I don't want to I'm trying really to spoil anything.
It's
That
hard.
really make it good, because I think writing about relationships, no matter what your topic, writing about relationships and being able to sort of show that humanness, everybody's going to find something in there to pull away from it. Everybody that reads this is going to be affected. So I just love that. I want to pull that forward. Thanks for tuning in to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Suzy Vidori. Help me continue to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or planning to write. Please consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Also visit suzyvidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly inspired writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about upcoming training, events, and writing courses that happen in my community. If you're feeling brave, check the show notes and send us a page of your writing that isn't quite where you want it to be yet for our Show Don't Tell page review episodes. Remember, that book and your writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make it the absolute best. If you're feeling called to write that book, keep going, and I'm going to be right here cheering you on. See you again next week.